The gravel crunched under my tires like brittle bones as I pulled up to the farmhouse. The kind of sound that promised isolation but delivered ghosts instead. Patrick's silhouette filled the doorway before I even killed the engine. Tall, broad-shouldered, his flannel shirt clinging to him from the day's sweat, and he stared down at me with eyes that cut through the dusk like a switchblade. "Alex?" he growled, voice low and laced with something I couldn't name. "Get your ass inside before the rain hits. We've got enough storms brewing without one from the sky." I slammed the car door, heart already jackhammering, because Bryce had sworn this weekend would be simple. A break from the grind of junior year at Iowa State, some fishing in the creek behind the barn, beers around a fire pit. But as Patrick stepped aside, letting the screen door slap shut behind me, I caught the faint scent of bourbon on his breath and the way his gaze lingered. A beat too long, on the curve of my jaw, the faded ink of my tattoo peeking from my sleeve. Bryce wasn't there to greet me. His truck was nowhere in sight, and the house felt hollow, like it was holding its breath. "Son's out running errands," Patrick said, jerking his chin toward the kitchen. "Won't be back till dark. Grab a seat. I'll rustle up some chili." His movements were all efficiency. Chopping onions with a knife that looked older than me, the blade flashing under the single bulb swinging overhead. But there was a tension in his shoulders, a coiled spring ready to snap. I perched on a stool at the island, the wood worn smooth from years of elbows like mine, and tried to play it cool. Bryce and I had been thick as thieves since freshman orientation. Him the golden boy quarterback with a laugh that filled rooms. Me the artsy queer kid from the suburbs who'd traded Chicago traffic for Ames cornfields. We'd bonded over bad poetry slams and worse hangovers, but he'd never breathed a word about his dad beyond old-school farmer, keeps to himself. As the pot simmered, filling the air with cumin and heat, Patrick slid a bowl my way without ceremony. "Eat," he commanded, but his eyes softened when they met mine, like he just remembered I was more than a guest. We talked easy at first, about the drought hitting the crops, how the co-op was squeezing small-timers like him dry. He was 42, widowed 5 years now. His wife, Elena, gone too quick from cancer, leaving him to raise Bryce alone on this patch of earth 2 hours west of Des Moines. "Boys got dreams bigger than this dirt," Patrick said, stirring his spoon absently. "Wants to coach high school ball, get out of the sticks." Can't blame him. I nodded, spooning chili that burned just right, and felt the first pull. A magnetic thing, the way his calloused hands dwarfed the bowl, the faint lines around his mouth when he smiled crooked. It was dangerous territory. Bryce was straight as an arrow, oblivious to the rainbow flags I'd pinned inside my dorm closet, and Patrick? He radiated that classic Midwestern stoicism, the kind that buried feelings deeper than tractor tires. But as the sky outside bruised purple, thunder rumbling distant like a warning, I couldn't shake the feeling that this farmhouse held secrets thicker than the walls. Bryce rolled in around 8, truck headlights slicing the dark like accusations. He bounded through the door, all 6'2" of him, clapping me on the back hard enough to rattle my teeth. "Alex, you made it. Dad, you didn't scare him off yet." His grin was infectious, blue eyes sparkling under the porch light, but I caught the flicker. Something strained in how he avoided Patrick's gaze, busying himself with unloading grocery bags. We cracked open Millers on the back porch, the 3 of us in Adirondack chairs facing the fields that stretched black and endless. Fireflies blinked like faulty stars, and for a moment, it was perfect. Bryce recounting a disastrous date with his latest sorority girl, me ribbing him mercilessly, Patrick chuckling low from the shadows. But as the night deepened, the beers loosened tongues. Bryce leaned forward, elbows on knees, and fixed me with a look that pinned me. "Hey man, thanks for coming. Things have been weird at home. Dad's been in one of his moods." Patrick's chair creaked as he shifted, the fire pit casting orange flickers across his jaw. "Moods?" I echoed, glancing between them. Bryce shrugged, too casual. "You know, the usual. Reminiscing about Mom. Staring at old photos like they're gonna bring her back." But Patrick's silence was louder, a storm cloud gathering, and when he finally spoke, it was to me, not his son. "Some things you can't bury, Alex. They just fester." I didn't sleep much that night. The guest room was up a creaky staircase, walls papered in faded florals that smelled of dust and regret. Moonlight slanted through lace curtains, painting silver stripes on the quilt, but my mind raced with fragments. Patrick's hug at the door, the weight of his arm across my shoulders as we'd hauled firewood earlier, the brush of his fingers against mine when he'd handed me a beer. It was nothing, I told myself. Projection from a guy who'd sworn off hookups after my last heartbreak. But in the quiet, with the house settling around me like a sigh, I heard footsteps in the hall. Soft, deliberate. The door handle turned with a click that echoed like a gunshot. "Can't sleep." Patrick's whisper filled the room before he did, his frame blocking the light from the hall. He was in boxers and a threadbare tee, hair tousled, looking every bit the man who'd wrestled steers and heartbreak in equal measure. I sat up, sheets pooling at my waist, pulse thundering. "Nightmares," I lied, because admitting the truth, that he was the dream keeping me awake, felt like stepping off a cliff. He nodded, like he understood, and eased onto the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. "This place does that. Too many echoes." We talked then, in the hush of midnight, about everything and nothing. He confessed the farm was drowning in debt, how Elena's medical bills still haunted the mailbox like ghosts. I shared scraps of my own mess, coming out to parents who nodded politely but changed the subject, the ex who'd ghosted me mid-semester for a straight phase. Patrick's laugh was bitter when I finished. "World's full of cowards, kid. But you've got fire. Don't let it flicker out." His hand landed on my knee then, meant to steady, but it lingered warm through the sheet, and the air thickened with what neither of us would say. By morning, the rain had come, steady, soaking sheets that turned the fields to mud. Bryce was up early, hollering about fixing a fence before the creek swelled, and Patrick vanished into the barn with him, leaving me to coffee and solitude. I wandered the property, boots sinking into the earth, past rusted tractors and a swing set creaking empty in the wind. In the attic, rummaging for old board games Bryce had promised, I found the box. Yellowed letters tied with twine, postmarked from San Francisco, addressed to PJ in elegant script. Heart pounding, I untied one, the paper crackling like dry leaves. "My dearest Patrick, the city lights can't touch the way you looked at me that summer by the river. Come back. This distance is killing me slow." The signature blurred, some name I didn't recognize, but the date was 20 years back, when Patrick was barely older than me. I shoved it away, guilt twisting like a knife, but the seed was planted. This man, this stoic farmer, had a past that burned brighter than the Iowa plains. Lunch was tense, rain drumming the tin roof like impatient fingers. Bryce shoveled stew into his mouth, oblivious or pretending, while Patrick watched me across the table, his fork paused midair. "Find anything interesting up there?" he asked, casual as corn silk, but his eyes were steel. I choked on a swallow, heat flooding my face. "Just Monopoly. Think we'll play later." Bryce snorted, but Patrick didn't smile. After, as Bryce napped off the morning's labor, Patrick cornered me in the mudroom, rain sheeting the window like a veil. "Those letters," he said, voice gravel rough. "They're not for prying eyes." I spun back to the wall, his proximity a live wire. I didn't mean, but he was closer now, hand bracing the doorframe above my head, trapping me in flannel and regret. "Meant or not, you saw. And now you know I'm not the widower Saint my boy thinks." His breath ghosted my cheek, confession hanging heavy. "I loved a man once, Alex, fierce like nothing else. Lost him to the city, to fear. Buried it all when Elena came along, good woman but not that." The vulnerability cracked him open, raw and aching, and before I could think, my hand was on his chest, feeling the thunder of his heart. We didn't kiss, not then, but the pull was there, undeniable, a current dragging us under. Bryce's truck rumbled to life outside, calling us back to chores, and Patrick stepped away, the moment shattering like glass. The afternoon blurred, mending wire in the downpour, laughter forced over lukewarm coffee, but under it all simmered the truth we'd unearthed. That night, Fire pit crackling against the chill. Bryce dropped the bomb. Dad, I know about the letters. Found years ago. That's why Mom left. Isn't it? The secrets. The silence was a chasm. Patrick's face went ashen. Beer bottle forgotten in his lap. Bryce. But the boy man now was on his feet, voice cracking. You think I didn't see how you looked at her? Like she was a consolation prize? And now Alex shows up, and it's the same damn thing. Eyes following him like he's the sun. Betrayal hung thick. Bryce's words a blade twisting in us all. I stood, rain mixing with the tears I hadn't noticed, and fled to the fields, thunder chasing me like judgment. The cornstalks whipped my face like accusations as I stumbled through the rows, mud sucking at my boots, the storm unleashing its full fury now. Sheets of rain that blurred heaven and earth. Lightning forked the sky, illuminating the farmhouse in stark white flashes, a beacon I couldn't face. Bryce's words echoed louder than the wind, eyes following him like he's the sun. God, was it that obvious? Had I been blind to my own hunger, parading it in front of the one person who'd trusted me with his secrets? Patrick, rugged, broken Patrick, had cracked open for me, and I'd let the shards cut us all. I collapsed against a rusted harrow in the field, chest heaving, the cold seeping through my soaked jacket. Memories flooded unbidden. That first week of college, Bryce dragging me to a bonfire party where I'd confessed my truth over cheap whiskey. Dude, love is love, he'd said, slinging an arm around me, no judgment in his easy grin. We'd been brothers since, unbreakable. Until now. Until his dad, with his quiet storms and hidden fires, had ignited something in me I couldn't douse. Footsteps sloshed behind me, deliberate, unyielding, and I knew it was him before he spoke. Alex. Patrick's voice cut the gale, steady as the earth itself. He loomed in the downpour, slicker thrown over his shoulders, face etched with lines deeper than the furrows we'd plowed that morning. Come inside. This ain't the place for truths. I shook my head, water flying like tears. I ruined it. Your son hates me. He crouched then, level with me, rain carving rivers down his stubble. Bryce don't hate you. He's hootin'. Same as me. Same as you. But runnin' won't fix the flood. His hand, calloused warm, gripped my arm, pulling me up with a gentleness that belied his strength. We trudged back in silence, the farmhouse glowing amber through the torrent, a fragile haven. Bryce was gone when we slipped inside. His keys vanished from the hook. A note scrawled on the fridge. Need air. Back by morning. Don't wait up. Patrick's shoulders sagged, the weight of fatherhood bowing him, and I felt it too, the ache of fractured family. We peeled off wet layers in the laundry room, awkward and charged, towels muffling the storm's roar. Dry by the fire, he murmured, leading me to the living room where embers glowed in the hearth. The space was a time capsule. Elena's quilt draped the couch, Bryce's little league trophies glinted on shelves, and above the mantel hung a photo of the three of them, smiling whole, at some county fair. Patrick poked the logs, sparks dancing like fireflies, then sank onto the rug, back to the warmth. I joined him, knees drawn up, the silence stretching until it snapped. Tell me about him, I said softly, because the letters burned in my mind, a bridge to the man he'd been. Patrick's gaze fixed on the flames, shadows playing across his features. Jude. Met him in Nam Draft Dodger like me. We washed up in Frisco instead, hidden from the world in Haight-Ashbury crash pads. He was poetry and revolution, all wild curls and manifestos. I was just a farm boy with grease under my nails. His voice softened, laced with wonder and loss. First time he kissed me, under the Golden Gate in fog thick as secrets, I knew I'd never be the same. But life, it don't bend for dreamers. They'd parted when Patrick got the call. Elena pregnant back home, family duty calling like a siren's wail. Wrote those letters for a year, begging him to wait. Then nothing. Heard later he died, overdose, they said. City chewed him up. The confession hung heavy, and I reached out, fingers brushing his. You carried that alone? He turned then, eyes meeting mine, raw and unguarded. Till now. Till you walked in that door and looked at me like I was more than ghosts. The kiss happened slow, inevitable. A tentative press of lips that tasted of rain and regret. His hand cupping my neck like I was fragile china. It wasn't fire. It was hearth warmth. A deepening that spoke of lonely nights and unspoken aches. We broke apart breathless, foreheads touching. The world narrowing to the crackle of logs and the thunder's distant grumble. This is madness, I whispered, but he shushed me with a thumb to my lips. Madness is livin' half a life, Alex. I've done enough of that. We didn't go further. Boundaries held by the ghost of Bryce upstairs, the note still chilling the fridge, but we talked till dawn crested, pink and hesitant over the sodden fields. He shared stories of Elena's quiet grace, how she'd known about Jude and loved him anyway, piecing together the man he'd become. I confessed my fears. The ex who'd called me confusing. The parents who'd whispered phase like a prayer. By the time Bryce's truck growled up the drive, we'd forged something tentative. A thread in the unraveling tapestry of the weekend. He burst in sodden and sullen, eyes red-rimmed from more than rain. Talk to Mom on the payphone at the diner, he said, dripping on the linoleum. She told me everything. The letters, the fights, how Dad came back broken. Patrick rose, face paling. Bryce, I never meant. But his son cut him off, turning to me instead, voice cracking. And you? Sleeping with my old man under my roof? Is that why you came? The accusation landed like a sucker punch, betrayal twisting his features. I recoiled, words failing, but Patrick stepped forward, shield and sword. No, son. This is on me. Alex is innocent. The argument erupted then. Voices rising over the kettle's whistle, accusations flying like shrapnel. Bryce hurled the truth we'd skirted. He'd suspected Patrick's moods were more than grief, had seen the letters as a kid and internalized the shame, lashing out at Elena until she left for good. You chose her over him. Over us, he roared, fists clenched. Patrick shattered, sinking to a chair. I chose you, boy, every damn day. I stood frozen, the outsider in their blood feud, until Bryce whirled on me. Get out, Alex, before you destroy what's left. But as I grabbed my keys, heart splintering, Patrick blocked the door. No. We face this together or not at all. The plea in his eyes undid me, and Bryce deflated, slumping against the wall. The rain had eased to a drizzle, sunlight piercing clouds like hesitant forgiveness, but the wounds gaped wide. That afternoon we scattered, Bryce to the barn, me to the porch swing, Patrick to the fields. But the air hummed with unfinished reckonings. Evening brought uneasy truce. Burgers on the grill, the sizzle masking silences. Bryce cracked a beer my way, eyes downcast. Sorry, man. Didn't mean that. Just, it's all crashing down. I nodded, throat tight. I get it. Families are messy. Patrick watched from the grill, spatula paused, his gaze a lifeline. As dusk fell, fireflies returning like old friends, Bryce cleared his throat. Dad, about Jude. I wish you'd told me, instead of letting me hate you for it. The admission hung, vulnerable, and Patrick set down the tongs, voice rough. I was ashamed, son. Thought love like that made me weak. You're not weak, Bryce said, fierce. You're human. And Alex, he's good for you. I see it. The words bridged the chasm, tentative but real. We sat then, the three of us, stars wheeling overhead, sharing stories. Not of loss, but of what remained. Laughter crept in, halting at first, then free. But as I lay in bed that night, Patrick's goodnight tap on the door lingering, I wondered if the storm had truly passed, or if betrayal's shadow still loomed. The next morning dawned crisp, the ground steaming under a reluctant sun. Bryce and I fished the creek as planned, lines casting lazy arcs, but conversation flowed deeper now. His own uncertainties, a flicker of curiosity about his roommate last semester that he'd buried under cheers and conquests. Maybe I'm not as straight as I thought, he admitted, skipping a stone. Or maybe it's just the beer talking. I smiled, relieved. Either way, I'm here. Patrick joined later, lunch pail in hand, and the sight of him, wading in with that crooked grin, eased the knot in my chest. But peace is fleeting on borrowed time. As we packed for my drive back to Ames, a letter arrived, creased envelope, San Francisco postmark. Patrick's hands trembled opening it, face draining of color. "Jude," he breathed, but the words inside were from a lawyer. An estate, a will naming him beneficiary after all these years, the past clawing back. The letter lay on the kitchen table like a landmine, its crisp edges mocking the chaos it unleashed. Patrick's fingers traced the embossed seal, eyes distant, as if the paper portal had sucked him back to that fog-shrouded summer. Bryce hovered by the sink, dish towel twisted in his fists, while I lingered in the doorway, the weight of witness pressing down. "What does it say?" Bryce finally asked, voice small, the boy peeking through the man. Patrick exhaled slow, folding the page with deliberate care. "Jude's gone. Passed last month, quiet in his sleep. Left me. Everything. The apartment in the Castro, some savings, a note." He paused, throat working. "Says he never stopped waitin'. Called me his unfinished poem." The room tilted, emotions crashing. Grief for a stranger who'd shaped this man. Envy for a love that endured decades. Guilt for the now we'd stumbled into. Bryce crossed the floor, clapping a hand on his dad's shoulder. Solid, affirming. "Then go see it, Dad. Close the circle." But Patrick's laugh was hollow, eyes flicking to me. "Can't just up and leave the farm, son. Bills don't pay themselves." The excuse hung thin, laced with fear, the terror of reclaiming a self long interred. I stepped forward, heart aching. "I'll help. Drive you there if you want. Bryce can hold the fort." The offer slipped out unbidden, born of that magnetic pull, but Bryce nodded fierce. "Do it. For once, let someone in." The drive to San Francisco was an odyssey of heartland to coast. Endless interstates giving way to Sierra passes, Patrick's old Ford pickup rumbling like a faithful steed. We left at dawn the next day, Bryce waving from the porch, his "be safe," carrying the subtext of trust rebuilt. Silence companioned us first, radio humming classic rock, Springsteen crooning about highways and ghosts. But as Nebraska flattened to Colorado's spine, words unfurled. Patrick shared Jude's letters verbatim, voice steadying with each recitation. Fevered declarations of jazz clubs and pride marches. Tender pleas for Patrick's return. "You ever regret staying?" I asked, as we crested a ridge, the Rockies jagged under a vast blue. He drummed fingers on the wheel, jaw tight. "Every harvest, every lonely winter. But regret's a thief, Alex. Stole enough already." His glance sideways was loaded, gratitude, desire, the unspoken promise of us. We stopped in motels that smelled of pine sol and transience, sharing beds platonically but charged. His snores a lullaby that lulled me into dreams of tangled limbs and whispered vows. Mornings brought coffee and maps, the road a metaphor for the miles we'd yet to bridge. By Reno, the air shimmered with neon promise, and Patrick cracked open, joking about slot machines, buying me a Stetson that sat ridiculous on my city boy head. "Looks good," he lied, grinning that crooked way that hooked my gut. We detoured to Tahoe, hiking a trail where pines whispered secrets, and at the overlook, Lake Sapphire below. He pulled me close, not for a kiss but a hug that anchored. "Thanks for this," he murmured into my hair. "Feels like breathing again." I held tighter, the vista blurring with unshed tears, because in that moment, I saw our future. Not easy, but possible. San Francisco hit like a fever dream. Hills steep as ambition, fog rolling off the bay like Jude's ghost. The lawyer's office was a glass tower in the financial district, all polished chrome and efficiency, a far cry from the farmhouse's honest grit. We sat side by side in leather chairs, Patrick's knee brushing mine as the will was read. The flat in the Castro, modest inheritance, a trunk of mementos. "He kept every letter you sent," the lawyer said, sliding a key across the desk. "Spoke of you till the end." The apartment was a shrine frozen in 1975. Velvet couch sagging under dust sheets, walls papered in psychedelic prints, a record player stacked with Coltrane. We unpacked the trunk in reverent quiet. Faded photos of young Patrick, wild-haired and beaming beside Jude at protests, ticket stubs from Fillmore shows, a leather journal thick with ink. Patrick's hands shook turning pages, voice breaking on entries of longing. He writes of fields and family, but I taste the lie. His heart's here, with me under these lights. I read over his shoulder, throat closing, the intimacy of their bond both inspiring and intimidating. That night, we walked the Castro. Rainbow flags snapping in the breeze, couples hand in hand under street lamps. Patrick tensed at first, shoulders hunched against memories, but as a drag queen hollered "handsome" from a bar stoop, he laughed, free, unburdened. We ducked into a dive for anchor steam and fish tacos, the jukebox belting Dusty Springfield, and there, in the haze of cigarette smoke and camaraderie, he leaned in. The kiss was deeper this time, tasting of salt and liberation, his fingers threading my hair as the world faded to just us. "You're not him," he whispered against my lips. "And that's why this feels right." We made love slow, in the apartment's brass bed, sheets crisp from the motel, bodies mapping new territories with reverence. No rush, no frenzy. Just skin on skin, breaths sinking like waves on the shore below. Afterward, tangled and sated, he traced my tattoo. A compass rose on my ribs, and confessed, "Scared I'll lose you too." I kissed his temple, fierce. "Not if we fight for it." Dawn brought practicality. Signing papers, packing keepsakes, but the city had worked its magic, loosening the chains of his past. The drive home was lighter, playlists shifting to hopeful indie. Bon Iver's falsetto over desert vistas. We talked futures. Me finishing school, perhaps interning at a Des Moines gallery. Him expanding the farm with Jude's windfall, maybe agritourism for queers seeking roots. Bryce could help, Patrick mused. Turn it into something for all of us. But doubt lingered, a shadow at the edges. As Iowa's flatness reclaimed us, radio crackling with storm warnings, my phone buzzed. "Bryce. Farm took a hit. Tornado touched down. Hurry." Panic surged, the truck leaping forward. We arrived to chaos. Barn roof sheared like paper, fields lacerated, the farmhouse spared but trembling. Bryce met us in the yard, face streaked with soot, relief flooding as he hugged his dad fierce. "Knew you'd come back whole." But as we surveyed the wreckage, cows lowing in the pasture, equipment twisted like modern art, Patrick's eyes hardened. "We'll rebuild," he declared, but the letter's ghost whispered otherwise. That evening, over canned soup by lantern light, power lines down, Bryce pulled me aside. "Saw how you look at him. It's real." I nodded, vulnerable. "Yeah, but only if you're okay." He clapped my shoulder, grin wry. "Family's big enough for seconds. Just don't break him." Laughter eased the tension, but sleep evaded me, the wind howling regrets. Morning brought neighbors, farmers in pickups, chainsaws humming solidarity, and we labored together, clearing debris under a sky scrubbed clean. Patrick directed with quiet command, his presence a steadying force, but I caught his glances eastward, toward the life he'd glimpsed. As the sun dipped, bloodied and triumphant, he found me by the creek, skipping stones. "The money, it's temptin'. City lights, Callan." My heart clenched. "Then go. But take me with you." His answer was a kiss, salt-tanged and sure, but betrayal brewed unseen. A call from the lawyer, complications in the will, whispers of another claimant. The call came at midnight, shattering the fragile calm we'd hammered from the storm's ruins. Patrick's phone buzzed on the nightstand, its glow harsh in the guest room's gloom, and he answered groggy, voice thickening as the lawyer's words sank in. "What do you mean, contested?" Jude named me, clear as day. I stirred beside him, sheets whispering, dread pooling cold in my gut. He hung up after an eternity, face carved from granite, staring at the ceiling beams like they held answers. "Jude had a nephew. Claims the will's invalid. Says his uncle was of unsound mind at the end. Bigot bullshit, probably. But it'll tie things up in court. The injustice burned. Another erasure. Jude's final gift poisoned by prejudice. Patrick rolled toward me, burying his face in my neck, body rigid with suppressed rage. Just when I thought. His words trailed to silence, but I held him tighter, fingers tracing the scars on his back from farm falls and forgotten fights. We'll fight it, I vowed, fierce as the twister that had spared us. Together. Dawn found us in the kitchen, Bryce nursing coffee, his eyes sharpening at our disheveled closeness. Bad news, Patrick relayed it flat, but Bryce slammed his mug down, chair scraping. Over my dead body. Jude chose you, Dad. That's law. Solidarity surged, the three of us plotting like co-conspirators. Hiring a pro bono firm from Des Moines Queer Legal Aid. Digging through the Trunks journals for proof of lucidity. Neighbors pitched in too. Mrs. Harlan from the next plot over, who'd lost her brother to AIDS in the 80s, baked pies and shared stories of wills contested on moral grounds. The farm became a hub of resilience, chainsaws giving way to strategy sessions around the scarred table. Amid it, Patrick and I stole moments, brushing hands over fence posts, midnight walks where kisses bloomed under starlight. Love, tentative and true, rooted deep. But conflict simmered beneath. Bryce, ever the protector, pulled Patrick aside one dusk, their voices carrying on the wind. Alex is great, but he's young, city dreams. What if this pulls you apart? Patrick's reply was steel. Or binds us tighter. I overheard from the barn, eavesdropping guilt gnawing. But it fueled my resolve. I drove to Ames midweek, scavenging library resources on estate law, returning with dog-eared tomes and a plan scribbled on napkins. We're not losing this, I told them, spreading papers like a battle map. Weeks blurred into a rhythm. Dawn chores, afternoon calls to attorneys, evenings of shared meals where laughter edged out loss. Patrick's transformation was subtle. A lightness in his step, the way he'd hum Dylan while tilling soil, eyes catching mine with private fire. We made love in the hayloft once, dust motes dancing in sun shafts, his whispers of forever muffling my moans. You're my now, Alex, he breathed, and I believed him body and soul. Yet betrayal lurked, insidious. The nephew, Mark, a slick accountant from Sacramento, arrived unannounced one muggy afternoon, suit crisp against our dirt-streaked overalls. He stood on the porch, briefcase in hand, smile oily as used car sales. Uncle Patrick heard about the farm troubles, thought I'd offer mediation. His eyes raked the place, dismissive, and when they landed on me, towel slung over shoulder from the well pump, he faltered, assumptions flickering. Patrick bristled, blocking the door. No need. We're handlin' it. Mark lingered, pressing. Jude was family, but that will? Influenced by old flames, perhaps. Dementia, they say. The lie landed like venom, and Bryce surged forward, fists balled. Get off our land. But Mark slipped a card, voice silky. Think it over, or see you in court. He drove off in a gleaming SUV, kicking gravel like spite, leaving us seething. That night, over whiskey by the fire pit, Patrick confessed a deeper wound. Mark's dad, Jude's brother, knew about us back then. Disowned him for it. This ain't about money. It's revenge. The revelation cracked something in Bryce, who drained his glass and stared into the flames. Like what they did to Mom. Hiding your truth till it poisoned everything. Patrick nodded, haunted.
Cycle, son.
But we break him. I squeezed his hand under the table, alliance unspoken, but doubt wormed in. Was I part of the cycle, or the break? Court loomed. A hearing in Des Moines, small claims turned spectacle by the queer angle. We prepped relentlessly, Patrick's testimony polished to raw poetry. Tales of Jude's clarity, their enduring bond. I stood by, moral support, but the drive-in was tense. Radio off, Patrick's knuckles white on the wheel. What if we lose? He muttered. Then we rebuild here, I said, hand on his thigh. With what matters? The courtroom was a relic, wood-paneled, air thick with polish and pretense. Mark's side paraded experts. A shrink testifying to cognitive decline. Affidavits from concerned family painting Jude as tragic, delusional. Our lawyer, a sharp-dressed dyke named Carla, shredded it. Journals entered as exhibits, Patrick's voice steady as he took the stand. Jude remembered everything, loved everything. That will was his choice, free as the day he wrote it. I watched from the gallery, heart in throat, Bryce gripping my arm till it bruised. Mark's cross-examination was brutal. Mr. Jennings, isn't it true you abandoned my uncle for a woman and child? Guilt money, perhaps. Patrick met his gaze, unflinching. I chose life, son.
Jude chose forgiveness.
That's the legacy. The judge. A silver-haired woman with kind eyes, recessed, but the damage lingered, whispers rippling. Farmer's boy toy scandal. We waited in a diner across the street, fries congealing untouched, when Carla burst in. We won. Clear title. Elation exploded, Bryce whooping, hugging his dad like a lifeline. Me pulling Patrick into a crush of bodies and tears. But victory soured quick. Mark cornered us outside, face twisted. This isn't over. I'll appeal, expose your indiscretions. His glare at me was pure venom, outing threat veiled as justice. The drive home was shadowed, elation curdling to caution. Patrick sold the apartment quick, funneling funds to the farm, new irrigation, a greenhouse for heirlooms. But Mark's words festered. Anonymous calls started. Hang-ups with breathing, a slashed tire on Bryce's truck. Hate from afar, Patrick growled, installing locks, but fear crept in, eroding our idol. Climax brewed that fall, harvest moon fat and accusatory. A package arrived, no sender, addressed to Patrick. Photos from the Castro, grainy shots of us kissing in the alley, Jude's journal defaced with slurs. Betrayal crystallized, Mark had tailed us, weaponizing love. Bryce found Patrick in the barn. Photos scattered like confetti from hell, and the roar that followed shook the rafters. He won't stop till he breaks us. I arrived to chaos. Father and son squared off, Bryce's face thunderous. This is because of you? Dragging Dad into the open. The accusation speared me, old insecurities flaring. Patrick defended, voice cracking. No, son. It's the closet that breaks. Hayden nearly killed me. But Bryce stormed out, truck peeling gravel, leaving me adrift in the aftermath. Patrick pulled me close amid the debris, but the damage was done. Trust fractured, shadows lengthening. The barn smelled of hay and heartache that night, the photos curling at the edges like dying leaves under Patrick's boot. He crushed them methodically, each stomp a punctuation to the rage boiling in his veins. While I gathered the pieces, fingers trembling not from cold but from the fragility of what we'd built. Bryce's truck lights had long faded down the drive, swallowed by the moonlit road, and the silence between us was a chasm wider than the Mississippi. He'll come around, I said, more prayer than promise, but Patrick's laugh was jagged, devoid of mirth. Boy's right to be mad. I dragged you into this mess. Exposed us all for a ghost's grudge. I dropped the scraps, stepping into his space, hands framing his face. Stubble rough, eyes storm-tossed.
No.
You chose living, Patrick. That's not mess. That's brave. Our kiss was desperate, a lifeline in the loft's gloom, but it couldn't staunch the bleed. We retreated to the house, barricading against phantoms, but sleep evaded, whispers of what-ifs circling like vultures. Dawn broke gray, Bryce's absence a void at breakfast. No clatter of bowls, no easy banter. He texted sparse. At a motel. Need space. Patrick's reply went unread. The screen a cold mirror to rejection. Days stretched taut. The farm a battlefield of unspoken grief. Neighbors rallied. Fences mended. A watch rotation against vandals. But the emotional toll mounted. Patrick withdrew, rising before light to prowl fields alone. His silhouette a lone sentinel against the harvest gold. I poured energy into the greenhouse, seedlings pushing through soil like stubborn hope, but doubt gnawed. Was I the interloper, accelerating the fracture? One evening, as frost nipped the air, I found him on the porch swing, a letter half-written in his lap, addressed to Mark, words of truce scrawled in pencil. "Can't fight forever," he said, not looking up. "Off-Aaron the money back. End this quiet." My stomach twisted. Surrender disguised as peace, erasing Jude's grace. And us? Hide again. He met my gaze then, weary. For Bryce. For the farm. The ultimatum hung, unspoken but ironclad. Choose safety or me. I walked away, boots crunching frost, tears freezing on lashes, because loving him meant freedom, not chains. Bryce returned at week's end, truck laden with takeout from town, face etched with regret. Talked to Mom. She said dads always run from hard truths. After Jude. After her. We sat at the table, Chinese cartons steaming, the three of us navigating minefield conversation. "I lashed out 'cause it hurts," Bryce admitted, chopsticks paused. "Seeing you happy, Dad. It stirs up what we lost. But Alex, he's family now." Patrick's nod was slow, throat bobbing. "Then help me fight right."
No idin, punto.
The appeal hearing loomed, Mark's escalation a specter. We fortified, Carla coaching depositions, community letters pouring in, tales from queer elders who'd weathered Stonewall echoes in the heartland. I testified too, voice steady on the stand. Patrick didn't abandon Jude. He honored him by living fully. Denying that will denies their love. Mark's lawyer sneered, flashing the photos. Grainy betrayal splashed on projector, but the judge recoiled, slamming her gavel. Irrelevant and prejudicial. Proceed with dignity. Victory came swift, absolute. Appeal denied, estate affirmed. Mark slunk away, tail between legs, his final email a venomous concession. "Keep your blood money. Family's overrated." But the win was Pyrrhic. Scars lingered, trust a tender shoot. Back at the farm, under a sky scrubbed to infinity, Bryce raised a beer. To unfinished poems. Laughter broke, cathartic, and Patrick pulled me close, public and proud, his arm a banner. Winter blanketed the fields in white, the greenhouse a green heart pulsing against the cold. We expanded farmers' markets in Ames, a pride booth at the county fair where Patrick manned the cider stand, his ally pin glinting. Bryce dated a barista from the co-op, confiding over bonfires about fluid labels. His coming out a quiet evolution. And us? Patrick and I wove lives. Weekends in Des Moines galleries, where I'd sketch his profile amid abstracts. Nights in the big bed, bodies and souls entwined without shame. Spring thawed the ground, and with it deeper roots. One April dawn, mist veiling the creek, Patrick knelt in the mud. Not proposal, but pledge. "Marry me, Alex?" Not for papers, but promise. Ringless, but his eyes held galaxies. I tackled him laughing, muddied and yes-saying, Bryce whooping from the porch like a sentinel. Years folded forward. The farm thrived, a haven for runaways and rebuilders. Queer youth volunteering for summers of soil and stories. Bryce coached ball in town, his husband a steady presence at holidays. Elena visited, mending fences with grace, her "I'm proud" to Patrick a bomb. And Jude? His journals bound into a chapbook, self-published, sold at our stand. Unfinished poems for a farm boy. Loss came too. Patrick's heart, weakened by years of silent strain, faltered one harvest, but he fought like the land he loved, pulling through with my hand in his. "Worth every beat," he rasped, and I believed him. In the end, it's not the storms that define us, but the rebuilding, the quiet choices to stand unbowed. That weekend at the farmhouse? It didn't just become unforgettable. It became us. Flawed, fierce, forever.